Hey guys, welcome back to another Coffee and a Chat. I've been looking forward to talking to you today. I've got some things I want to share about some of what God's doing in my own life and things that He's been challenging me with and showing me. And I just want to share them with you because it's very possible that some of you are going through something similar, and that I just hope that what the Lord is showing me and how He's encouraging me, that I can share that with you and maybe be an encouragement to you as well. You guys, nothing is more important. Nothing, absolutely nothing is more important than our relationship with Jesus Christ, no matter what we go through. And I was talking to Marvin this morning of a little bit of frustration of how we seem to have this idea that everything should be about, that making us happy, that we should be happy in it, and just have what we want or what we think we need, but really is just what we want, that we make it so much about us. And yet I know that my life here on this earth during this time is not supposed to be about me, but it's about Him. That's what it's supposed to be about. And that my time to rest will be when I enter into His kingdom, when I enter into eternity, that's when things will change. But see, my opportunity to make a difference for the kingdom of God, that's right now. That's right here. And that can call for sacrifice. In fact, I think it usually does. I mean, Jesus sacrificed everything for us. Why do we get so upset about having to sacrifice for Him? It should give us joy. So just kind of narrowing this down to something a little more specific is, for a while now, I've been going through some things physically in my body. And I don't know what all has been going on or why it's been going on. I don't know what it is, what's causing it. All I know is I began to, with one part of my body, and then it began to spread through my whole body with pretty intense pain. And it has really affected me, and it has hindered my ability to do a lot of things. So 9-10 days ago, I would say, I had to use a cane. I could not walk. My daughter kept saying, yeah, I think you need to use a cane, Mom. I think it would go better. And I was like, I don't want to use the cane. I'm not a cane kind of a person. And I have these two really awesome canes in the house. They would not, meet, I'm sure, the medical standard anymore, because they both belonged to my great-grandfathers. And so one is a more expensive cane. It's got metal on it. It's got a horse's head for the handle, made out of brass, and it's very stylish and all. The other one is a simple branch with a curve in it that was used for the handle, and all the little pieces that were growing off the branch were stripped away. The bark was stripped away, and then it was given a hand finish on it. And it's more lightweight because it's just an old piece of wood. But which, funny enough, ended up being the one that was worked the best for me. But anyway, I had to. It's cool having stuff from the past. I was like, when my great grandfather, made this cane because he needed a cane. Did he have any idea that one day his great granddaughter would be using that cane? We just don't know. What we're doing today, how it's maybe going to minister into somebody else's life on down the road. But that's just a little side note, a little freebie extra, But it was bad enough that I was actually having to walk with a cane. 7 days ago, on a scale of 1 to 10 for pain, like they do when you go to the hospital, I'd say I was easily at a 15. I was fighting the tears. It was pretty bad. There wasn't a lot, well, it wasn't really much of anything that I could do that would lessen the pain and give me any kind of relief. And 7 days ago, I was like, Lord, I don't know what's going on in my body, but you do. And right now I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm headed for home, this, whatever's going on, this may be my time. And that's okay, because I'm ready to go. But it hurts so bad, and nobody, I think, does anybody enjoy suffering and being in pain? If they do, something's probably not making a full connection up here, because how could you possibly like that or enjoy that? It's terrible. And when you're in tremendous pain like that, it's hard to even hold on to a thought and process things like you need to. It was very, very challenging. And so that morning when I got up, I knew, one of the things that hit my spirit is that I've been so busy. I've had so much on my plate, so much to do. I can't even come close to keeping up. And the one thing that for sure has fallen by the wayside is my self-care. And I knew I'm not even drinking my herbal tea like I need to. And that makes all the difference in the world for me. So that morning, I with everything in me, I pulled myself together enough to make a cup of tea. And by the next morning, when I got up 6 days ago, I was still in tremendous pain, but I would say I'd gone from a 15 down to a 12. I could tell there was a difference. I made my cup of tea out of yet another herb. I rotate my herbs so I get, a little bit of everything that I need, unless I need to target one specific thing. But since I wasn't even really sure what was going on, I just thought I need to cover it all. So I moved to my next herb and had my tea. And I've been having my herbal tea every single morning since, and every day I've been so much better. And today I can, it's 7 days later, I can walk normal, I think, pretty close to it. I still have a little bit of pain, but I'd put it at a 2 or a 3 compared to what I've been going through. It's not even hardly worth acknowledging it. And do I believe that's God working in my body? Absolutely. But I also know He laid it on my heart that I've not been doing my herbal tea like I'm supposed to, like He's told me to do. And so I think stepping back into obedience and just trusting the Lord, because I don't know what's going on. It's in His hands, and and so He's taken care of me. But through this time, because it's been many, many weeks of pain, in this time I have been trying to figure out what was going on, trying to push through, do what I needed to do in a day. I've got people and dogs that depend on me every day, trying to do what I needed to do. And staying in the Word and praying and, and doing what I do. But it made me think about something. And I've talked about some of these things before, but this... my mom had a lot of health problems. She was in and out of the hospital, having surgeries, on medications. I mean, she went through it her whole life. She had told us when we were little kids, and I think I've told this story before, but that doesn't mean everybody. Some of you are new here, you won't have heard it. But my mom, not everything functioned right on her body. And not everything was exactly what it should be. And she was a very little woman. And she had told us one day that when the angels were in heaven and they were making babies, when they would come across a defective body part, they would throw it over into a box behind the door. Well, one day when, the head angel came in and looked behind that door and saw that box was pretty full of defective parts and kind of looked through there and said, hey, you guys, there's enough body parts here to make a baby. So they took the body parts, they made a baby, and my mom said, and that's me. And so now she was just trying to be silly with her kids, you know, that I was made out of defective parts. You know, what can I say? And truly, for everything my mom went through, it was like she was made out of defective parts, but she wasn't. She was completely perfect, the way that God made her and intended for her to be. We all are. We may think or wish or want, you know, or pray that things would be different, but we are the way He created us, every single one of us. And those things that we don't like about ourselves are probably some of the things He delights in the most. You know, I used to have a thing about my nose, and God probably just adores my nose, probably thinks it's absolutely, you know, gorgeous, you know, because He made it that way on purpose. But that's just like such a non-important thing, what my nose looks like. You know, I had to grow up to figure that out. Yeah. So my mom went through a lot of what I would say was suffering in her life. But yet, if we ever said she was suffering or, you know, made reference to that, she would get so upset. And she was, you know, because she learned from her mom, which I learned too, you know, and my grandmother was always, there's always going to be somebody worse off than you. And there's always going to be somebody doing better than you. There'll always be somebody prettier than you and somebody not as pretty as you. There will always be somebody smarter than you and somebody not as smart as you. You're average. Whoever you are, you're average. That was my grandmother's belief, and so my mom, having been taught that, you know, my grandmother taught me that when I was little too, you know, and it's just, understand you're just average. You're not greater than, you're not less than, you're just average. And so my mom, you know, in that light was, don't ever say I'm suffering, because there are people who are truly suffering. You know, what I'm going through might be a hard time. You know, my health may not be the best, but I'm not suffering. And so she was really big on that. But there were times when she would struggle with stuff. And there was this one time when she was very, very ill. I don't remember what all was going on with her. I know we had to, when we would go visit her, we had to put on a mask and a cap and a gown and, you know, and gloves and all of that. And it was partly to protect us from what she had, and partly to protect her from what we might bring in. And anyway, we had to do that. And so my dad and I had seen her the night before, and she was not doing good. She was not doing good at all. And I remember wondering, was I going to lose my mom? You know, was I going to be an orphan by the next morning? And my dad, his heart was very heavy when we left. And so we went home. Well, the next day, we got together to go to the hospital to check on her. And when we walked in, my mom was beaming, glowing. She was so happy, so excited. And she's like, oh, you just don't know what happened last night. And I would say I probably was in high school when this happened. And anyway, you know, we're like, what? You know, what happened? And she said, you know, after you left, she goes, I felt so bad. I have been so sick. And she goes, I'm still so sick. But she goes, but I just don't care right now. And she goes, sometimes there are things when God does something so extraordinary in your life that you don't even notice that you're sick, or you don't feel the pain, because the joy of what God is doing in you overshadows all of that. It overwhelms it, and it takes precedence. And so I'm like, well, what happened? So she said, well, shortly after you guys left, she goes, the night shift came on. And she goes, my night nurse came in and introduced herself. And she goes, you know, usually the floor, there's so many people, you know, the patients need help and all. She goes, it was very quiet last night. And she was able to get her paperwork done. And she had some time free. And so she came and sat with me because I couldn't sleep. I was so sick. And so she came in here and she goes, and she started to pour out her heart to me and tell me things that you don't just go tell somebody you don't know. And she said she was weeping and crying and saying, look, I don't even know why I'm telling you all this. This is not like me, you know, and I shouldn't be doing this, and it's so unprofessional and all. And my mom said, I just told her, honey, don't worry about it. The reason you're doing that is because the answer to your problems is Jesus Christ, the one that you need. And she goes, and I spent several hours listening to her and witnessing to her and sharing with her, and God moved in her life. And, you know, and she goes, and I began to realize if I wasn't sick, I wouldn't be in the hospital. And if I wasn't in the hospital, that nurse would not have come in to my room. And I wouldn't have been here to share Christ with her, because it changed that nurse's life. Oh, that nurse came in to see us because we were there about close to the shift change. And she, you know, came in and was telling us what God had done in her life. And it was so exciting and so awesome. And then, you know, she left, her shift was over. And so she was going, and the next nurse was coming in, and we were sitting there just talking about it. My mom just couldn't get over it. You know, it just was just bubbling out of her. And I know that. I've been through that. I know that feeling. And, she said, you know, she was telling us, you know, about how it's just dawning on her. And I said, Mom, what if this is your ministry? What if God requires you to have ill health so that you will be where you need to be to share with people that you would never be able to share with otherwise? And that had an impact on my mom, to where she began to see no longer as a burden these health problems, but it was her ministry. And that, yes, she'd have to suffer. Didn't say that to her, and she would never have said that to us, but she had to go through some things in order to be available where God needed her to be available. Now, for some of you, this is probably like a really, oh, Angie, you're crazy. No way. God doesn't want us to be sick. By his stripes we're healed. And yes, 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 yes. But you guys, he uses things in our lives, and sometimes it does call for us to suffer. Sometimes it does call for a sacrifice. And I had known, and I know I've told this story before, a woman that I knew in our church that had type 1 diabetes, and she hated diabetes, and she was always praying for the Lord to bring a cure for diabetes. And she went into complete kidney failure. She had to go on dialysis, and she was just so upset and confused, maybe angry at God, because her kidneys were no good. And yet, you know, when I talked to her, I'm like, okay, so when you go to dialysis, are there other people there? Yes, I go every day, and, you know, it's the same group of us in there. And, well, what do you guys do? Well, we sit around in our little recliner chairs, and, you know, some people take naps, and some are crocheting, and some are reading books, or, you know, and I was, well, what if? Because you know God, and you're going through the same thing they are. So if you were to begin to speak to them, they'll listen to you where they wouldn't listen to me, because they would just tell me, you don't know what I'm going through. But they can't say that to you. And you know, God used that, and this woman had a ministry. She was in dialysis, I think 2 years, whatever her maximum was, and then she got a kidney transplant, and she lived probably another 6 months after her transplant. I don't think it was much longer than that. But that time of dialysis became one of the sweetest times of her life, because she found she had a ministry, and people did listen to her. And what had been people taking naps and doing all these other things turned into a Bible study during their time of going through dialysis, as she shared the Lord with them. And they listened to her because they knew that she knew what they were going through, because she was going through it too. Just a little different way to look at things. So this scripture, this has kind of put a new twist on it. And Marvin and I were talking about it this morning, because I was just saying, you think about it, 7 days ago, I couldn't walk. I was in so much pain. You were having to do things for me. I couldn't get up and down. You know, I was struggling. It was all I could do to stand up out of that chair. And what shuffling I did around to move, oh, but I could not walk normal. I really couldn't walk. Even with the cane, it was almost impossible. But look at what God's done. Not a miraculous healing of, like somebody came and prayed over me and all of a sudden it was all gone. I'm still got it. It's just getting less and less each day. And it could, I don't know, maybe it'll come back. I don't know. But I always tell the Lord this: if this is something that you have sent for some reason to me, because go through the Bible and you will see that God sent evil spirits to torment people at times. He sent disease to do a work. He allowed illness, sickness to be in people's bodies for purposes. Ask Paul about that one. That's what kept him humble. Okay, so God does allow these things. We don't want to say that. And he does use these things to bring honor and glory to him. The blind man, I always come back, if we were doing, don't make a negative confession, and God, Jesus walks up to the blind man to heal him, and, oh, no, Jesus, I'm not blind. I mean, other people say I am. So, yeah, I walk around holding on to other people, but I refuse to accept that negative thing on me. So I'm not blind. You'll have to find somebody else to heal. What would he have missed? Look what he would have missed. But no, he spoke the truth. Yes, he was blind. And when they asked who had healed him, he said, I don't know. All I know is I was blind, but now I see. And the disciples asked Jesus, why was that man blind? Was it a sin his parents committed or a sin he committed? And Jesus said, neither. He was born in this condition for this day and this hour, so that I might be glorified and my Father might reveal me through his healing. So sometimes we might want to whine and moan and groan about something that God actually is asking us to bear for him. Romans 12, verse 1 says, I urge you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And I don't know, this morning I read that verse and I'm like, could God call on me to even surrender my body to him, to go through some things that he might be honored and he might be glorified? And if he does, am I willing to do it? Or am I going to complain? At this point in life, I don't want to complain. I don't want to complain at all about it. And if that's something that God asks of me, I want to be surrendered to him to take it on. The next verse says, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. I don't want to think like the world thinks. I don't want to be focused on me. But I want my mind transformed and renewed in Christ Jesus, so that I'm open and ready to receive whatever it is that he might ask me to receive, and do whatever it is he might ask me to do, even if it means that I'm hurting, or I'm suffering in some way, that I have a loss, a burden to bear, whatever it might be, whatever he would ask of me. I don't want to say no to him. I want to be open and ready to receive. In junior high, I played basketball. I loved playing basketball. And I'm not very good at making those shots anymore, but I did 11 years ago. The day I met Marvin, my grandsons were out shooting hoops. And, when I played, there was no such thing as a three-point shot, and so they were trying to make three-point shots and they couldn't do it. And so I'm like, where do I stand? This was so Jesus. So I stood there, they showed me, and I go, okay, so now I just got to put it in the basket. All right. And I made the shot, It went in. And they were like, and I'm like, okay, gotta go. I was smart enough to know I'm not trying that a second time. But it was so perfect. And they lived in these apartments. And there was a lady sitting up on her balcony watching an older lady. And oh, she was just busting up laughing that here these teenage boys, they can't make that 3-point shot. And this old lady comes up and makes it no problem. Like, it's so easy. It wasn't me. It was, I'm sure Jesus said, hey, Angel, go over there and pick that ball up and put it in the hoop for her. I don't know. But, yeah. So, but when I played basketball, you always wanted to make sure, you know, that they knew if you were open and ready to receive the ball, you know, make sure they know, make sure they know. And I want to be open and ready to receive whatever it is that God's going to throw at me. And you guys, the things he's been throwing at me lately have not been pleasant. So I don't say that lightly. But that's who I want to be. I want to live for him, not for me. This isn't Angie's world. This isn't about Angie or Angie's kingdom or Angie's wants or Angie's desires. This is about Jesus Christ. And today has been a good reminder. So anyway, I love you guys. I'm gonna take off now. It is another hot day. See, don't I just look gorgeous with all my little, when I talk about, you know, it looks like cotton candy and it with the consistency of bubble gum. This is good. Only it doesn't have the bubble gum thing, but the cotton candy's there. Woo, just blow away. All right, I love you guys. I'll talk to you again real soon.